Hey, Alex Tabarrok over at Margin Revolution put up a good graph to commemorate Labor Day yesterday. Annual working hours per worker. This spans about 150 years. And looking at Western nations, U.S., Australia, U.K., Sweden, Belgium, France, Germany, we went from full time, your total number of hours worked per year north of 3,000 hours in the late 19th century to
What do we got now?
yeah, between 1,500 and 2,000 hours today. And his commentary, two words: thanks, capitalism. Yeah, free enterprise system had something to do with that. You were able to do more in less time. The productivity. I know we're not supposed to use that word because the
It's
village
bad.
elders in River Forest told us not to. But yeah, the productivity advances that come with the innovation that's attendant to free enterprise. It's worth noting. It's worth noting. Also worth noting is this piece by Rusty Reno in the New York Post. You don't get this a lot. Rusty Reno agreeing with Fortune 500, Fortune 5 CEO, but his piece, Amazon CEO is right. Get back to work. Andy Jassy, the CEO of Amazon, wants workers to come back. It's probably not going to work out for you if you don't come back. He told workers, much to their chagrin and much to sort of the public opprobrium that was directed his way. How dare you say that to your workers? For more on this, pleased to be joined by Rusty Reno. He's the editor at First Things, firstthings.com. Rusty, thanks for being with us again. Appreciate it.
It's,
So you and Andy Jassy reading from the same playbook here.
What's going on?
I don't know. I think he came to the playbook pretty late.
Yeah, I'd say.
I mean, we're 3 years.
Yeah.
What are we? More than 3 years, 3.5 years since March of 2020. And part of what I point out is that there was a lot of happy talk that corporate America, was talking remote work. It makes people more productive. So if you recall back to 2020, 2021, there was a lot of cheerleading for remote work. I always thought it was bogus. I mean, I never thought remote work could be as productive as in-office work.
And well, there's a
By
lot.
the way, are we not supposed to use the word productivity?
Oh
Yeah,
yeah, we
yeah.
have to fill
River
'em in.
Forest, the village of River Forest, which is by Oak Park there, and it's one of these
Affluent suburb.
affluent,
Definitely.
leafy suburbs with the super intelligent and super accomplished. So in other words, it's leftist. They retained this outfit to come up with some plans to make River Forest more attractive to non-white, non-heterosexual male job applicants. And one of the recommendations is to not use the word productivity because
No,
because
tell 'em why.
because that you see, let me explain this to you, Rusty. So what that does is that imposes expectations on the worker, and that
Like that
maybe,
they would be, say, productive?
well, there you go again. And
We
so
can't have you on again.
what
You're saying
what
the P word.
what we need to do is what employers need to do, like you at First Things, is focus on making sure employees know they're valued, and then they will be more likely to meet expectations that you're not allowed to define. But that's it's we just need to reverse the flow of who's really in charge, and obviously it's the employees.
Well, before the pandemic, all these, especially tech companies, but it filtered throughout the Fortune 500. There was a lot of coddling of employees, free food and laundry services at the office and all that kind of thing. So I do think that right, there's a kind of reality check that we're going to go through. I remember meeting with a retired corporate lawyer. We were talking about this probably 2021, and are people going to go back? And he said, nothing like a recession to get people to go back to work.
Uh-oh.
So he had pointed out he
Right.
had seen it in the 80s and then again in the 90s that although unemployment rate's still pretty low, so I think employees still have some leverage, but not as much as they did in the immediate aftermath of the
Well,
pandemic.
Mr. Reno, I don't know if you know, there's a large group of people. They've never been into an office. I met this lady at church, this young lady. She graduated in 2020. She's never had to go into an office. She's done remote work her entire, young career. So, and they're of the mindset, I think that, well, I'll do 3 days a week, but I'm not going back 5 days.
Yeah, I certainly know some young people on that line, and I tell them, you got to make a choice. Or do you want to be a laptop service worker, or do you want to be, CEO, or you want to be executive suite? And a lot of people don't have that much ambition. They just want to make a salary and have a good life, and more power to you. But I think if you're ambitious, you just got to you're kidding yourself if you think you can advance rapidly without being in the office and in the line of sight of the decision makers for an organization. So, like I said, some people aren't that ambitious, and well, fine. But I think if you are ambitious, you got to be in the office. And this is a great time for an ambitious young person because you have less competition. You can signal to your boss that you're raring to go, and there are plenty of people who are seduced by the illusion that they can rise in success by working from home.
You make the mention too. I don't want to align you and the Amazon CEO too closely, as you talked about him coming late to this. You actually brought your workers back at First Things in August of 2020. So yeah, while these guys, these dilettantes, were parroting whatever was coming out of Tony Fauci's mouth.
Well, they were not just parroting it, but they were reinforcing it. I think that
Yeah.
if you were a grandee in the American economy, you had to pretend this was all going to be fine. Otherwise, you would get hammered. I mean, I fly under the radar screen. We've got 12 employees, and some of them are remote. I mean, I have a couple people who have worked remotely before the pandemic, obviously. But a lot of these young people, they were desperate to come back to the office. They were so isolated, these little tiny apartments in New York. So they were kind of grateful that they had an excuse. Oh, my boss is making me go in.
Right.
There's all that shaming somehow that you were an evil, wicked person if you were not self-isolating forever.
Now, the only question I have about your piece, I'm not sure I would use this metaphor exactly.
What?
You write, arguing for the superiority of in-office teams over Zoom-linked employees is like making the case that it's nearly always better for spouses to live in the same city, preferably in the same dwelling. I think maybe this remote work era, there were a lot of husbands that were making the case that you could do that with marriage too. So I don't know about that exactly.
Well, no, what do you mean? Back up.
No, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. If I'm as productive of working remotely, then yeah, exactly. We could be in the same general vicinity, but maybe 3 days a week we'll be in the same dwelling, so that sort of thing.
Yeah, well, there are exceptions, obviously, that prove the rule. There are some cases where it's only because the husband lives in Chicago and the wife lives in New York that the marriage endures.
Yes, exactly.
But 99% of the time, it's best. And I think the same thing with the home office work. Surely there's got to be some functions that can be done remotely very effectively. But, it's the conversation you don't plan to have that's often the most important one you have in the month.
Yeah, right. As opposed to we're allotting this, 30-minute Zoom call. Yeah, no, that's a great point.
Exactly.
I wanted to get your reaction to something else, to another topic. This piece from Frederick de Boer, who's an academic and a Marxist. Identity politics is a game the left can't win. He writes something this is like pithy, they think, comeback to the criticisms from conservatives about identity politics. White, rural, patriotic Christian, that's an identity, no less so than any of those that progressives champion. But he writes that the trouble is that while calling out the right for its identity politics is a clever rejoinder to conservative rhetoric, it doesn't change the underlying political context, which is the right is better able to utilize identity politics than the left. Frederick de Boer is lamenting this fact, right? He's suggesting that we have to get better at identity politics because we're being too we're atomizing people too much. We're segregating people too much. we need to get better at it because we can't let the right win this game. But do you think that he's right? I mean, I hope he's right, but it doesn't feel like he is.
It's a kind of weaselly use of the word identity. I think, I think I'm in favor of identity politics of the sort that privileges Americans over non-Americans. I think, people in Washington, D.C. ought to say, our job is to look out for the interests of Americans. Well, that's an identity of a sort, obviously.
Right.
I mean, strictly speaking, but that's different from the rainbow flag type identity, which is, it's atomizing. It is, it's adversarial. So
it's zero sum. It's also sorry to interrupt, but it's also zero sum. Whereas like intellectual shared identity, your faith or your sort of philosophical worldview, that's not zero sum.
Exactly. I can share it. In fact, I want to share it. I want more people to join, so to speak. I think there's an identity around shared loves and loyalties, obviously, because we know that. We identify with people who share our values and convictions. And that's different from, shared DNA or these objective characteristics, which I think is it's much more inflexible, it's less human, more reductive. Whereas our shared loves are, they're uniting identities rather than dividing identities. I mean, we obviously disagree with people on that many things, but so I just think there's a confusion on Du Bois in his thinking there.
Well,
I don't think people on the right really have an identity politics in the same sense that people on the left do.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But what about his concern that the left is self-immolating? As I said, I wish that were true. Then I look at what's happening in all of our civic and cultural institutions, and I don't see that to be true at present.
It's hard to say. I mean, there's a lot of dissatisfaction out there, but then no one, the rich and the powerful seem to acquiesce. The voters, the homeowners in River Forest sign on.
Yeah.
It's like, I find it perplexing. I mean, I think that it's a paradoxical thing. They think that, it doesn't really matter, right? The world continues to grind on, and productive economic behavior is rewarded in our society by and large still. So why can't we just accommodate the wackos who are over in City Hall or in Town Hall or whatever it is over in River Forest? So you know what I'm saying? So I mean, that's why it feels like on the one hand, there's no resistance, and it just seems to invade like an infection all these institutions of our society. And I think it's an illusion that wealthy center-left people have that they can sort of turn the switch off if it gets too extreme.
Right, and that
we're going to find out, aren't we? Sooner rather than later.
Well, right. I mean, like French Revolution style, perhaps. But I mean, that this is the self-delusion that that stuff is silly. It's removed from me, and it's never going to appear at my doorstep.
Well, but there is an element of truth. I think Black Lives Matter. I think we'll find out. Is that a switch that the left can turn on and off? Trump's president, we get street protests. Biden's president, we don't get any street protests. And that would suggest that sort of the wealthy people and lefties in River Forest are correct, that they really can turn this thing on and off.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know. I think both are bad for our society, right? It's bad to manipulate people with this divisive rhetoric, even if it can be ultimately turned off at the will of the powerful. But on the other hand, and it's really certainly dangerous if it takes over and we do have a Jacobin sort of Russian Revolution type situation. I don't know. We live in a crazy time. There's no doubt about it.
No doubt about that. Rusty Reno, editor, firstthings.com. Rusty, thanks as always. Appreciate it.
Okay, great. Thanks.
Thank you. And he joined us on our turnkey.pro answer line.
It's what Chicago is talking about. It's Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan and Amy on AM 560. The Answer.
Attorney Joe Cordell.
Business owners and professionals face special challenges in divorce court. In addition to everything else going on, they have to contend with allegations that they are earning more than they are, coupled with claims